Let's rock and roll. So this is always the crazy part of going live. I don't know if I'm actually live right now or if it's still getting going. Chances are I'm live, but my dashboard says that I'm just starting and it doesn't say that and now it says that I'm live. Welcome, hey, what's up? Luke Hart here. So tonight we have an awesome live stream ahead of us. If you might go ahead and give me a shout out or something in the chat just so I can make sure that you all are getting this stream properly. It's always the thing, always the question in my mind if it started up well or not. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, I would appreciate that. Awesome. Hey, Paul, what is going on? Good to see you, man. So tonight on the stream, we're going to be talking about some really awesome stuff. Let me see my little listo that I got going on here. Hey, Princess Carnudo, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. Good to see you. So we're going to talk about, so the main thing that I want to do tonight is I mostly want to have a hangout with you guys. You're going to ask questions, I hope, and I'm going to answer your questions, and we're just going to have a fun couple hours here just talking about dungeon mastering stuff, or possibly Dungeons and Dragons stuff in general. I think any topic is fine, as long as it's in that general area, that general ballpark. We're probably going to talk about a couple things here to get going. I had some people asking me questions about how to find good players. There was one guy that was having trouble playing online, and I think he had players that were like flaking out really often on him and not sticking around, and so he was having difficulty just running online games. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and we're also going to talk about how to retain players, how to keep your players in your games, and we also had Michael over on Facebook ask me a question about the best way to deal with a party of flying characters. So we are also going to be talking about parties of flying characters tonight on the stream. And then hopefully you guys are going to be asking me a bunch of questions, and we will answer your guys' questions. And if we don't get any more questions and I get through all of my pre-prepared topics, then I might do a thing where I just hop over to Facebook and just kind of scroll through some of the groups that I'm in to see if we find some interesting topics on there. People ask questions on there that sometimes are pretty interesting to think about. So we might do that tonight too. Joshua, what is going on, dude? Good to see you in the house. Glad you could join us. Now, Josh, are you like at work tonight, or is this like a free night? I'm just curious because a lot of times, you know, you're like half working and half listening to the stream. So, Macedo, what's going on, dude? Will play for food. Awesome. Hey, you know what? That is something that I am like, I think as a dungeon master, I'm pretty easy to bribe. So when I have players that bring me offerings or food, I have one player that brings me like expensive adult beverages, let's say, and other players will just bring like, you know, food to pass around and stuff, and I love that. That is really, really cool. One of my players like gifts me with like expensive miniatures and stuff too. It doesn't prevent me from doing things like allowing his characters to die or anything like that in game. But I do not mind the occasional bribe every so often. Let's say that way. So the whole will play for food, I totally am on board with that. Macedo. All right. So first thing I want to look at is I had a question from Dirk over in Facebook Messenger, and he was talking about how difficult it is for him. Apparently he's trying to play online games, probably on D20 or maybe Fantasy Ground or some similar type of thing. And his comment was basically along the lines of how it's hard for him to get players to stick around. Like he'll start up a group and he'll be DMing and stuff, and maybe they'll do one session and then players just tend not to come around again. They just tend to flake out and he can't keep groups together and stuff like that. Now, this is interesting because I've anecdotally heard from lots of people that it's difficult to get players online to stick around. So I'm wondering if anybody here has had that experience before. Let me know down in the chat. I'm just curious if this is like a universal thing or if this is just like an isolated thing, whether online gaming, if it's, you know, Roll20 or whatever, if it's hard to get players to stick around, if it's normal to start up a game and then have it turn out to be a one-shot because nobody else joined. So it looks like Josh is working at GameStop. You have me on the speaker system. Oh, sweet. Hello, GameStop shoppers. It is Black Friday. I'm sure there are lots of awesome deals in the store. So go ahead and hook yourselves up with some awesome video games. I have lots of video games from GameStop that I have never played because I always like go on these Black Friday things, buy a bunch of stuff, and then never have time to play them. So I'm sure you'll play all your games though. So feel free to buy. There, Josh. I just gave you a little plug. How's that for you? You never tell me something like that because you never know what I'm gonna do. All right, so let's talk about how to find good players online for online gaming. Well, I mean, I can tell you that for me, when I've been finding players, I mean, the LFG group in Reddit is amazing. I mean, I cannot say enough about that. I mean, it's just, I'll just type it into chat here. I mean, if you just go to Reddit and then just go to the LFG subreddit, I have had excellent, what do you want to call it? Success finding players there. And now all of my games are in person. So I should preface this whole conversation. I really have zero experience finding players to play online. And so I have not had anything, any experience about that and players getting them to stick around and stuff. But I know the LFG subreddit, you can find tons of awesome players. And I don't know. All the players that I've found there have been really good. And many of them are still in my groups now. So I would recommend, if you want to try to find players, that's the first place I would go to find players, whether it's in person or online. Now, as far as how to find good players, I don't think there's any secret formula. I really don't. I think that especially if you're playing online, it's going to be hit or miss. I think you're going to have some people that are just going to flake out and not be good, other people that are going to be good. I don't know that there is a secret formula to finding good players. If somebody knows the secret formula to finding good players, I would love, throw it down in the chat for me and let me know. Because I think there are I suspect that there are lots of dungeon masters out there playing online games in like D20 and stuff that struggle with this same thing. In fact, I heard I think one of my friends at work was telling me that, let's see, here's a distraction. Paul says, the very format is different from a table, but the big thing dynamically, I guess, is check the game regularly. I like to say at least early in the day and sometime in the evening, and everyone be cool with the turnaround time. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, if you're playing online, over D20 or something, I think it's all, like, live, right? Like, you're playing with everybody live at the same time, right? The Maniac, what is going on, dude? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us, man. What was I had a train of thought. I was saying something, and then I lost my train of thought because the chat distracted me. Paul says it's possible to have or all to be online at the same time, so you could set a time frame to play. Yeah, I think when I talk about playing on D20 or Fantasy Grounds, I'm thinking that everybody's playing live, right? Like everybody picks a time and you all get together and play live. Otherwise, I think what you're playing is more like a play-by-post thing, which is legitimate. I did that for years when I was in Central America. But I'm mostly thinking like a live gameplay, right, is what I'm mostly talking about. So what was I talking about? I was talking about how to find, I don't know that there's a way to find good players to get them to stay in your groups. I mean, not that I'm aware of. I mean, you can do things like, I've heard of dungeon masters doing things like sending like surveys and questionnaires to people to like kind of like see what they're like before they come into a group or something. I mean, I don't know. There might be some value in that. I've never done that before. The most that I've done before I have brought people into my group is I usually do this. In fact, I play almost entirely with strangers. In fact, people that I either meet, I meet them through Game Shop posters. They'll call me or they'll usually email me, or I'll meet them from Reddit, from the LFG forum there. So everybody that I have in my games, almost everybody in my games currently, has been a stranger that I met online. There's only actually a couple people that I would say are my friends that I knew beforehand that are in my games now. And so one of the things that I definitely do is especially since we meet in players' homes, so you're actually inviting a stranger to come to your home and play, which is like, could be a scary thing, depending on how comfortable you are with that. So I usually will take a new player and I will meet with him in person before we actually get together to play. I mostly want to get a gauge of whether I think the guy is a psycho or not. I mean, to be honest, I just want to make sure that, hey, this seems like a normal guy. You know what I mean? He seems like he's cool. He's not going to like, whatever. And so I'll usually try to meet with someone at least once. And I did this I have like on-call players too for my games. So like if a normal player can't make it, then I have on-call players that I can contact and they'll come join the game so that I have a full group at the table. And so I'll do this with my on-call players as well. I'll meet with them first, make sure they seem mostly cool. We'll talk about their character, stuff like that. I might answer questions and get an idea for their gaming experience, where they're coming from and stuff like that. See what types of games they like and whatnot. So I'll usually do that with potential players that I'm bringing on or on-call players. I mean, these days I don't actually invite strangers to my games. I have enough on-call players that, like, if an opening does open up in my games, then I could reach out to one of my on-call players who's usually played in at least a few games with us, and I have a really good idea of how he is as a player, and I can open an invitation to the on-call player to say, hey, I have an open slot in my game. X and X had to move or got busy or whatever. You want to come join me? And so I usually have a really good idea of what that person is like before he comes into my group, right? Coffee. Lots of chat going on. I'll get caught up on the chat in a second here. I don't want to lose my train of thought. So I imagine that if you're trying to find players, right, online, you could do sort of like an online meetup with potential players to kind of gauge what they're looking for in the game and stuff like that, to make sure that your player is kind of thinking along the lines that you are as far as what he wants in a game and stuff, and kind of get an idea for how he is as a person and stuff like that. So you could do something like that for online games. There could be some value in that. I don't know. I know for sure that for in-person games, it's super, super valuable to do that, right? And I would be very hesitant to bring like a total stranger into like either my home or the home of like one of my friends or one of my gaming buddies, you know, without having at least met them once. And so I definitely do that sort of thing to kind of get an idea of who's who, that sort of thing. So I'm gonna read the chat. I have a couple other things I want to talk about on this topic too that I have kind of noted down in my notes, because that's where you note things in your notes, and then we'll get back to that. But let's take a look at see who's in here. So Alex, what's going on? Alex says, "Who are you and what do you do?" I am Luke Hart. I am a dungeon master. I run D&D games. I also have a YouTube channel, and I do questions and answers. Right now we're doing a question and answer, so that's who I am. That's what I do. Oh, that might be like a personally what I do. So my profession is a technical writer. I work with software developers, and I develop documentation for them, stuff like that. I do lots of communications, announcements, internal communications inside the office where I work and whatnot. And so I do, help documents. I do some like a little bit of graphical design work, not a whole lot. I'm by no means an expert, but that's kind of what I do for my day job, let's say. So a writer basically. There we go. Game Masters Vault, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you here. Paul says it's play by post, so it could be many minutes or some hours between turns. Or yeah, I did play by post where it was literally days between like stuff happening, so I'm totally familiar with that. It was lots of fun, very slow. It's very easy as a dungeon master, in my opinion, to run play by post, because like you have all the time in the world to like think about if somebody wants to do something, look up rules and stuff like that. And since I'm a writer, play by post was fun because like I'm literally writing like a fantasy novel in my play by post stuff. It was really cool. So it was good practice too for my writing skills, because I wasn't writing anything else at the time. So Game Master's Vault says you could always kidnap your players and keep them locked up in your basement. Be nice to them though, and run games for them and feed them. And if you want to try it, let me know. I'm available. So to be kidnapped and locked up, you could do that. You could do that. Roy, what's up, dude? How you doing, man? Making time in low rent, high rise, no place to go downtown, crushing. I don't know. All right, buddy. I don't know what that means, man, but it looks like you're eating Subway, so enjoy your Subway. All right, rock on. All right, I don't know. Roy's just posting some stuff up on here. I think he's been enjoying some spirits. So, True Mate, what's going on, dude? How you doing, man? Live chat, sadly, already 1. All right. It's already 1 where you're at? It's like 1 a.m.? Is that what you're saying? Wow, that's crazy. So you're like in Europe or something, right? I assume. All right, so if you guys got questions, remember this is a Q&A thing. Go ahead and leave your questions in the chat. Give me a hashtag question, all caps, so that I can see it. And I will be getting to questions here in a little bit. So if you got questions, throw them in the chat, and then we'll be answering questions, because that's what this is all about. So the one thing, so back on the topic of finding good players, every time I hear this, I read these people leaving these comments and stuff, whether it be Facebook or Reddit or whatever it is, saying, I can never find good players. Good players are so hard to find and stuff like that. And the one thing that constantly comes to my mind when I read these things is the idea that I have no control over what another person does, right? I have control over what one person does, and that's me. I can control my own actions. So what I mean by that is I can't control another person, whether he's going to be a good player or a bad player, right? I can only control myself. And so I think that it's more productive for us to not think about how to find good players, but rather how can I be the best dungeon master I can be, so that the players want to stay in my games, so that the players are encouraged to be good players in my games, right? So I think that is a much more productive question than this like crazy endless like unicorn rainbow search for good players, because I think that's fruitless. I think it's much better for me to worry about and think about and focus on how I can improve my game, how I can make my game appeal to a wide variety of players, or even better, learn my players and see what they like. And that might mean talking with them before the campaign or the game even begins and saying, hey guys, all right, what do you guys like in a game? What are the things that really get you going and interest you? And then as a dungeon master, I can craft my campaign to be something that appeals to my players. Now, chances are you're going to have a wide variety of players. Some of them are like the beer and pretzels guys. They just want to blow things up. They want to hack and slash, kick doors down, and kill stuff. Others are going to be your role players. They're your thespians. Others are just very passive, and they're just like, this is cool. I'm just going to sit here and be quiet, and I'm just going to enjoy everything that's going on. So you're going to have a wide variety of players, more than likely in your games. And so you're probably going to have a variety of combat. But the point is, see what your players like, right? And then give them something that they will enjoy having, enjoy playing, and be the best dungeon master you can. And there are lots of things that you can do to like level up your games and stuff like that. There are lots of there are other YouTube channels you can watch. There are things you can read, Facebook stuff, and online Reddit has a lot of good stuff on there. So there's lots of things you can do to just improve yourself as a dungeon master. I think there's a lot more value in that than trying to find this like unicorn perfect good player type thing. And so I think that I would focus on that. That's my plug for that whole topic, I think. Because I think it is erroneous to assume that I'm running a good game, right? It's because usually like most people have like we don't have necessarily a really good conception of ourselves. We usually tend to think the best of ourselves, right? And so I think that, you know, if we ask ourselves, am I really running a good game? Am I running an engaging game that my players are enjoying, right? And there are different ways to figure that out. I mean, the basic way that I judge, to be honest with you, whether I'm running a good enough game or not, now it doesn't have to be fabulous, right? It just has to be good enough. The way that I judge it is basically, are my players sticking around? Because here's the thing, my games run for about 6 hours roughly. We play from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until about, well, we're supposed to stop at 9, but we usually don't stop until about 10, okay? And so I think that's 6 hours. So if my players are coming back every couple weeks for 6 hours, they're basically giving up one of their days on the weekend, and they're giving that up and they're putting aside other plans they might have with friends, family, or whatever. And if they're continuing to make that sacrifice or whatever to play Dungeons & Dragons, and they keep coming back, that tells me that my game at least doesn't suck. There's at least something there, whether it's the camaraderie with the other players or whether it's the game that I'm running, there's something there that they want to keep coming back. And so the basic judge that I use of whether I'm running a good game or not is, are my players coming back for more? That's the basic bottom thing. So every time, to be honest with you, every time people are like, I can't get my players to stay, my players always flake out, I just wonder, you know, what's the quality of the game that the Dungeon Master is running, right? If the players are not sticking around, then I think the Dungeon Master would be well advised to examine look at his own house first, right? And make sure that he's running an awesome game that's going to engage players and be fun to them. And if he gets that in line and he makes sure he's got those bases covered, then he knows it's not himself. But I just think it's valuable to consider, right? Can I improve what I'm doing so that players will want to stick around? So I'm just throwing that out there. I think that's always something, a little bit of introspection is very important. I have another thought on that. I see chat going by. I see lots of chat going by. All right. I'll have to take a look at some of this chat in a moment here. One of the things, too, that you can do if you want to improve as a dungeon master is ask your players. Get some feedback from them. Like, one of the things that I do occasionally during my games is I stop a little bit early so that everybody's not like trying to rush out the door, and I just go around the table and I ask everybody, you know, I ask them to get feedback on my game. I ask, you know, first of all, I ask them, what is one thing that you liked about this game session or game sessions in general that you want to see more of? And two, what's something that you would like to see improved about our games, or something that we're not doing that we should be doing, or something that we do or that I do as a dungeon master that I should stop doing, okay? And I go around to the players and I let them know that this is, this is a safe space. Nobody's going to freak out here. I am soliciting your feedback so that we can improve our games. And then it's, of course, on me to be a big boy about it and not get offended, because I'm asking for their feedback, and I'll get feedback from them. And a lot of times it's good. Other times they'll bring things up that I can improve on. And I think having an open mind as a dungeon master to the fact that we're not perfect and that we can always improve and there are always things that we can do to make our games better, I think it takes humility, right? But it's very important. I mean, if we want to continue to offer like awesome, fun games to our players, then that's something that we, need to always be thinking about. How can I improve my games? And getting feedback from your players is like one of the very best ways to do that, because they're gonna have. I mean, everybody's biased, right? But at least they'll have the viewpoint of a player. Hey Luke, I really liked it when you did this thing. But you know what? When you were doing that, like, that was not fun. Like, I don't think anybody enjoyed that at the table. And that's something else that you can do, too, is, like, during the game, look around at your table and just see, are people laughing? Do people appear to be having fun? Is everybody on his cell phone? Here's a big thing. I mean, for me, if I look around and I see most of my players on their cell phones, right, and I know that they're not looking up spells or something because we're in combat, if most of them are disengaged and on their cell phones or whatever it happens to be, then I'm probably not engaging them enough for them to pay attention. That's just me personally. Your mileage might vary, of course. So that's just a thought that I had about that. So I'm going to scroll through the chat here and see what we got going on. So somebody asked some questions. I've kind of I think I've talked myself out on that subject a little bit. At least I've covered all my notes. So let's see what we got going on over here in the chat. I have a message held for review. I don't know what that is. Okay, TrueMate has a question. He says he or she, I don't know. I should probably say they, so that I don't mislabel someone. Sorry, TrueMate. Question: I find it hard to make a satisfying one-shot. In your opinion, what are the core aspects of a good one-shot? Awesome. So I'll answer your question. I'm pretty sure I did a video on one-shots as well. You can look for it in my library and catalog and crap like that. It'll probably be better produced than the answer I'm going to give you, but I will give you an answer. Because it's lame to just be like, I made a video on that. Go look at my video. So I'll answer you. I just need to drink coffee first. And drinking the coffee is important, because that way I can, do intermissions and stuff like that and put cool pictures up on the screen for you all to look at while I, have a bathroom break. So one-shots. Satisfying one-shots. I think one of the big things, in my opinion, for a satisfying one-shot is that the players get to the end of it, right? Now, that might seem obvious. Of course, they got to get to the end of it. But a lot of times when you're running a one-shot, there is a time limit to it. I run Dungeons & Dragons at conventions a lot. I'm now doing about a couple conventions a year. And there's always a time limit. Usually it's about 4 hours. And that usually means that you don't actually start until about a half hour into it, which means it's about 3.5 hours. And a one-shot, in my opinion, that does not get to the end and give the players the satisfaction of an ending to the actual story is rather a failure. They might have had fun the whole time, but they didn't get to end the one-shot. So I think that a satisfying one-shot is definitely one that has a conclusion. The players actually get there. Now, the way to actually get them there is to build your story or your plot or your adventure in such a way that it's a little bit like modular, which means that there are little pieces in it that that are optional, right, that you can pull out if you need to. Let's just say that we have 5, because I have 5 fingers on my hand. Let's say that we have 5 modules, little modular pieces in my one-shot. Let's say that the one-shot begins with the players arriving at a local tavern where they get the quest, and I'm being very generic here. This is probably not a good idea for a one-shot, but I'm just making something up on the spot, so you're going to get what you get. The players arrive at a tavern, and they get the quest, right? That's the very beginning. You got to have that in your one-shot. And let's say that the very end of the one-shot is that they confront a criminal that they were tasked with finding, and they either kill him or capture him to bring him back to who he's got to go to. Is my hand on camera? I want to make sure my hand is on the camera. There we go. And all of these 3 pieces in the middle here are optional, right? They don't have to happen. Now, you might have an investigation scene where the players are going and talking to someone named Granny Titchwillow, and Granny Titchwillow might be able to help them find where this criminal Ashton Sanguine is. And this right here may or may not happen. You might have another one here where there are some knights called the White Knights, and the White Knights are hunting down witches. And in exchange for getting a hold of Granny Titchwillow as a witch, they will give the adventurers information to find this wanted criminal because they happen to know where that criminal may be. And there might be another optional little thing over here where there might be some like monsters or something raiding a farmhouse that have to be dealt with. And you can run this in such a way that you keep an eye on the clock during your one-shot. And if the players take an hour in town doing stuff, then you know that you got to get them to the ending. Now, let's say the ending here, the final confrontation with the criminal, takes like 45 minutes or so. You know that if they take an hour here and this takes 45 minutes, that you only got about maybe 2 hours left to work with, which means that you may not get to all of these things. Let's say that they go to Granny Titchwillow, and let's say that she only takes a half an hour, right? That's pretty good. So you're at 45 minutes here, you're at a half hour, you're at an hour 15, let's say, and then they go to these White Knights or something, and these guys take like an entire hour or something, right? And you're at like, what is that, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's say they take an hour and a half for some reason. Let's say they go really long time. Let's say they like end up fighting half of them and it takes a long time. You might not have time left to do this little other thing that you had planned, in which case you cut that out and you don't run it at your table. And so if you build your one-shots in like a modular fashion so that certain pieces can get cut out if you don't need them, if you don't have time for them. And the key to this, of course, is to build it in such a way that you don't have to have all of these things happen, right? If these things are all optional, then you can pull out some if you don't need them. I got to be careful which ones I pull out too, because I might end up with a bad figure here. So, but build your one-shots in such a way that there are things in the storyline that you can pull out if you don't have time to do them, to make sure that you get your characters, your players, all the way to the end. And so I think that's the one thing about building a one-shot I think that comes to mind is very useful. The other advantage of this too is that if you can usually build this in such a way that your one-shot is very sandboxy too, because if you have a bunch of stuff that's optional that doesn't need to happen, and you can use it if you need it or you want to or you don't, right? It gives the players a feeling of, wow, we're just kind of like in this sandboxy world, you know what I mean? And then the thing that it takes though is it does take a little bit of guidance from the Dungeon Master perhaps to make sure that they actually get to this spot here. So yeah, I mentioned sandboxy, but it might have to be a little railroady, because if you want to make sure they get to the end of it, to get to this criminal and finding him, then you might have to give them a little gentle guidance along the way. So just throwing that out there. That's my response to how to run a one-shot. So there you go. I hope that's helpful, true mate. Let me drink your coffee and we'll read some more comments. All right, true mates at 1 o'clock a.m. Awesome, man. Thanks for joining us, buddy. UK, sweet. The Maniac. I'm in Air Cadets, and I'm going to a 6-week aerospace training course. Oh, that sounds awesome, man. I was thinking of doing a Starfinder campaign. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Are you kidding me? If you're running Starfinder, I mean, I've never played Starfinder, but my understanding is that it's similar to Pathfinder, only in space, right? I'm going to wager a guess that's what it is. So if you're with other people that are like in aerospace and they're cadets and stuff like that, I bet they would totally be into that sort of thing. That would be totally sweet. And it would give you guys something to do, right? Like, I don't know how rigorous your training and stuff is, but I imagine there's probably some downtime that people would have lots of fun sitting around playing Dungeons & Dragons. I know that my brother is in the, what is he in the? He's in the National Guard, and he was deployed overseas a couple times. And when he's deployed overseas, like, he's like, okay, so we work like 12-hour days, but then we have like all the rest of the night to do like whatever. So he just had like an Xbox and stuff. He was in Kuwait for a while, and then he was in Iraq for a while. So he just like played video games the whole time. So I imagine there's enough downtime where you can get some Dungeons & Dragons in and people would have tons of fun doing that. All right, let's keep going here. Roy is just leaving some interesting comments here about his cat and movements. I'll leave it at that. You guys can read that. Aiden says, in a similar vein, but once you've managed to wrangle players, how could you approach educating them? I've got many friends interested in playing semi-regularly, but they're not the sort to get into anything slightly geeky. They enjoy D&D, but only if I manage their characters, their spells, and progressions. That's interesting. Let me think about that for a second while I get a drink of coffee. So I had some players at work that joined a game. They were in my game for a little bit, and then they kind of left. They were too busy and stuff. But we play every Thursday. We play on Thursdays at work over lunchtime. And they were very casual players, what I call them. They were more interested in like hanging out with other people than necessarily D&D itself. And so all of the like fiddly bits of like the actual game mechanics and stuff didn't interest them quite as much as just like stating what their character does and doing cool things. And so if most of your players are like that, then I would consider doing something like just, watering down the rules a little bit, making the rules simpler and not as complex. One of the things I did, I actually ran Dungeons and Dragons like a one-shot. Sorry. The downside of a live stream. I ran a one-shot for my entire technical writing team once at work. And what I basically did is I made up a really easy rule set on the spot. Not on the spot. I did it ahead of time, but it didn't take me very long. And basically, it was just like you rolled 2d6, and then if you rolled a certain like range of numbers, you would have like a failure. Another range was a success. Another range was like a really, really big success or something. That I'm probably slaughtering the like system I came up with. But the basic idea is that all the players had to do was simply state what they were trying to do, and then they would roll 2d6, and then based on the results, they would either fail, be successful, or whatnot, or they would, whatever. That's the idea. And it was very, very simple. And the players that ended up leaving my normal D&D group, they told me later, they were like, we really liked that, and we actually prefer that style of play to like the full-blown D&D method, because they just weren't into all the game mechanics and stuff like that. They were more interested in just like, they liked the idea of role-playing, they liked the idea of like this fantasy world and like using their imagination and stuff like that and stating what they're doing, but they didn't like the idea of all the rules and stuff. And so I made a system that was extremely rules light, and they liked it a lot. So I would consider, like, you might do something like that, right? Just to make it easier for them. Maybe they're more into that sort of thing, and it would make it just easier on you as well. Just making the rules a little bit easier and not worrying so much about it. If you truly want to educate them, if they really want to learn and they want to learn all the rules, then one of the best ways to is to start playing with them so they have an idea of how the game goes, and you're asking them to do all these little rolls and checks and stuff, and they're like, okay, and they're just making them and stuff. And then what I did for some of my players is I had a little meeting outside of the game where we weren't actually playing the game, but I just met with some of the new players, and I said, okay, you guys have been playing for a few weeks now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually explain how some of these game mechanics work so that when you're in the game, you understand it a little bit better. And so we just had a meeting where I explained some stuff, and they asked a bunch of questions, and I answered their questions. And I think that was really helpful. And so if your players are really interested in learning more about the game, what you could do is schedule times to get together with them when you're not actually playing the game to just explain things to them. And that might be valuable for you. I know it was for me. So that would be my suggestion for you. Aiden, I think, is who asked that. So, all right. I'm going to drink coffee, and we'll keep scrolling down. If you got questions, guys, remember, leave them in the chat. Hashtag capital all caps question, and we will answer questions. I like the picture of Asarak in the thumbnail. Hey, thanks, Maniac. That is from the DMG. That's just straight from the DMG. Since Wizards is kind enough to let us use their artwork and stuff as part of like fan art and stuff like that. So Aiden says, I'm not absolutely against this, but I would like to encourage them to learn a bit more. The problem is just that they're completely laypersons in regards to anything game fantasy related. Yeah. Any ideas? Okay, yep, I think I answered your question. All right. Game Master Vault says, I ask for feedback on every game too. Yep, that is the way to go. Roy, you're just like, I don't know what you're even talking about in the live stream, dude. That's funny. All right, Princess Carnuda. Princess Canuta is one of my patrons, by the way. Thank you, Princess Canuta, for your support. I do appreciate it. She asks, and we'll have to give her an answer too, since she's a patron. I would like to kidnap my players, make them suffer for 12 hours, and then make them pay a fee to be let out. All right, so Princess Canuta, I think that I am legally beholden to not tell you how to do that. So I am not going to be able to give you any advice on how to do that. In fact, I probably will have to officially dissuade you from doing so and tell you that you can get into severe legal problems if you do that. So there is no kidnapping of players. There is no torturing of players. You need to be nice to them. All right, there you go. Sorry, that's all I got for you. All right, Game Master Vault says, ooh, if they're on their phones, roll initiative. A large Tarrasque comes tumbling out. I mean, you could do that. Just slaughter them with a Tarrasque. I don't know. Actually, I did have a problem once with one of my groups. They were on their phones a lot, and all I did was, before a game session began, I just said, hey guys, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the last game session. I noticed that a lot of you guys were on your phones, and I just want to talk about that. And I just straight up spoke to them, and I explained to them that, hey, if you're using your phone for like looking up spells, because there's actually this app on the phone. It's really, really good, actually. It's called 5th Edition Spellbook. And if you get this, it's only for Android, I think. But literally what this thing allows you to do is, like, you can search for spells. And I don't know if you guys can... This is probably not going to be visible. No, that's not going to be visible. It's going to be all blown out for you. But you can search for spells on there so much faster than looking it up in the player's handbook. And so I told my players, if you guys are in the game and you're looking up spells, right, and you're actually doing something, on your phones or whatever that's, helping, and it's not just like surfing Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or, I don't know, Instagram or something, then that's cool. But if you guys can, like, not be on your phones and actually be paying attention and stuff, that's great. Because we do live in a digital world, right, where it's just normal for people to just pull out their phones every second or something and do stuff, If I notice that my players are paying attention and they're engaged in the game and stuff like that, then it's not a problem, right? If it gets to the point where they're just not paying attention and stuff, and like I'm having to repeat myself and whatnot, then that's something that needs to be addressed. That could be something that's on the players, but it could also be something that's on me. I might not be running an engaging, interesting game, and they might be getting bored. I might be running a game where I have 3 out of my 5 players, 3 of the players are off doing something for a half an hour to an hour, and all I'm doing is playing the game with them, and 2 other players are somewhere else, and they're not included in it. I can't very well expect those 2 other players that aren't actually actively playing to be paying too much of attention. If they're opening their books up and reading books or on their phones, and that's not really their fault, in my opinion. That's my fault because I'm running a game that doesn't involve everybody. They either split up intentionally, or I created a game where they split up, and then, so there are situations where I would expect them probably to be disconnected or something if I'm running a game like that. So, but yeah, if you're having trouble with cell phones, my advice is to just talk to your players and explain to them. I've been in games before where the dungeon masters explicitly say no cell phones at the table, no electronic devices. They don't want you looking at any of them. They've apparently had enough problems where they outlawed them, so they've done that before. I don't like doing that because it's super, super useful to be able to look up things like spells with your phone. All right. All right, Maniac. See you later, buddy. Aiden says, I might try that. I think part of me is enjoying the rules and system, but I may start chipping away at some of the fat. The meeting sounds like a good idea, too. Awesome. Yeah, that could work, dude. That could totally work. Just want to check something out over here. Awesome. All right, so if you got questions, leave them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to keep yammering on about some stuff here. And we might go over to Facebook and just start scrolling through Facebook and answering things. But I would much rather help you guys. If you guys are watching and you got questions out, it doesn't have to be about Dungeon Master stuff, right? It can just be about the game in general. I'm happy to just talk about the game in general. Things that are going to help you guys in whatever way. And it could be something that you might think is a very simple question or a silly question. It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, my entire goal with this channel and doing these videos, especially these live streams, is to help you guys. I want to be giving content and information that is valuable to you. So if you got stuff that you want to know about, please throw it up there, and I'll do my best to answer it. I might not have a good answer. It might not be very well thought out because it's all live and improv, but I'll do what I can. What I'd like you guys to do too is, on the topic of how to get players to stick around, I would like you, for those of you who have played in games especially, let me know in the chat what are things that make you want to stay in a game. Like, what kind of game elements or whatever that a Dungeon Master does make you want to stay in the game, right? Things that he does that you're like, wow, this game is amazing. I really like this game. And also, what types of things that Dungeon Masters do make you not want to stay in a game? What are things that get on your nerves or things that you just can't stand? Let me know down in the chat. I would be interested in knowing what you guys think, because if there are some commonalities, right, of things that like players as a general rule like in their games or don't like in their games, I think that's useful for Dungeon Masters so that we can learn from that, right? So let me know. And it could be things that not necessarily just that Dungeon Masters do well or do wrong, but it might be things in general in the group that like either compel you to stay or drive you away. For instance, you might have a group, like it could just be a general atmospheric thing, like people that are constantly arguing or something, or people that are bickering that make you just not want to be there. Or it could just be like camaraderie and stuff like that that makes you want to stay in a group. So if you guys got thoughts of things that make you want to stay in groups or leave groups, leave that down in the chat. I would be interested in knowing what your guys' experience is as well, because I think we can all help each other out just by contributing ideas and stuff on this topic. All right, now we're going to talk, as you guys are typing some stuff down there, we're going to talk about the best way to deal with a party of flying characters. So, somebody asked a question, so we might get to that. I might just tease you with the flying characters thing and then get back to that in a second. The reason I wanted to talk about Party of Flying Characters, two reasons. One, somebody asked a question. Michael on Facebook asked me about it, so I want to answer his question. And the other reason is that I did a video like a few weeks ago. It was like some rant video. And it's interesting because the rant, this like slobbering rant video was intended to be comical. I wasn't actually mad or anything, but I posted this over on Facebook and people like freaked out on me. I thought it was hilarious. They actually thought I was serious. I don't think they got like the sarcasm or the humor. But anyway, one of the examples I gave in that video was about flying characters, right, and stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Flying characters, yeah. But we got some questions. Ooh, we got a couple questions. Awesome. Hey, Tactical Tokens, what's going on, dude? Good to see you. Glad you can make it. So quick shout out, Tactical Tokens. This dude makes he makes these little tokens. You know what? I could probably grab some of these tokens and show you. He sent me some of these things. They're really, really cool. I should just give me a second. 1 second. I'm getting into my war chest with all of my miniatures so I can grab some tokens to show you guys. So we'll do a little impromptu like show and tell. So this guy makes these little tokens, and we'll see if I can actually get these to show up. So this is what they are, and you guys can see that there is like full color on one side of the token, and then there is like black and white on the other side. And then he gave me some that have my like little dragon head on it as well. He had a Kickstarter going, and I backed his Kickstarter, and I got some of these bad boys, and they're really, really cool. They're like really high quality, pretty durable. They got some sort of like coating over them, and so they're not going to go bad or anything. And the reason I like I love miniatures. I will never ever give up my miniatures, right? I love miniatures. But these things are like super portable, very, very easy. You can get like hundreds of these in like a little baggie or a little like box type thingy. And so I use these at the conventions that I play games at, so I don't have to drag all my miniatures with me. And these are like really very useful. And so there you go. I think he's got like a website called tacticaltokens.com or something like that. Something like that. So anyway, feel free to check them out. They're very useful, and they're much, much cheaper than like miniatures. I think I punched the numbers once, and I think it came out to be like $1.25 per token, which, I mean, a miniature, the cheapest miniatures you can get on like, what do you want to call them? Oh, what is that place? The Reaper Minis is like $3 for miniatures, and you can get miniatures in bulk other ways too, you know. So they're an inexpensive alternative to full-blown minis. So feel free to check that out. There you go. You got a little plug on the live stream, Tactical Tokens. So there you go. All right, so we had some questions up here. So he's not paying me, by the way, either. That's unsponsored. If the dude were paying me, then I would probably just tell you guys. But he's not. He's just pretty cool, and I like his product. So there you go. All right, questions. We have some questions up here. and then we'll talk about flying characters. I'm like my tease. All right. Game Master's Vault says, what villain would you choose as the big bad of an arc for a party of 5 level 7s? Must be close to a normal race. I'm thinking vampire. Do you have a better suggestion? I don't know off the top of my head. Let's pull up the Dungeon Master or the Monster Manual and let's see what we come up with. Stand by. I just need to find this bad boy. So I think actually, you know, I have it up. Stand by. Let me find it. Let's get this bad boy over here and Monster Manual. And then I need to make sure it's sized properly for my live stream window. And there we go. So is that the Monster Manual? That is the Monster Manual. Stand by. Boom. There we go. Okay, we're in the Monster Manual. So the question from... Who's the question from? Sorry. Game Master Vault, I think. So here's the thing. If you're trying to choose a villain and they're party of level 7s, you don't want to choose necessarily a CR7, okay? Because if you choose... Well, actually, a CR7 might be okay. Let me show you guys something here. Stand by. I need to get something here. This is a little... This question actually isn't as simple, in my opinion, as it might seem. There's actually some deeper considerations that need to go on behind the scenes when you're picking a villain, a level-appropriate villain, in my opinion. So let me pull something up here. I just need to get some stuff figured out for you all. Stand by. I was not clearly was not prepared for this question at all. Bam. Stream window. So there we go. All right. So here I'm in Google and I'm going to go to my favorite site for calculating encounters, and I'm going to blow that up a little bit so you all can see this. That's pretty good. So you guys can see, I will toss a link to this in the chat so you guys can go there if you feel like going there. Did it work? There you go. That worked. And so if I'm doing 5 level 7 characters and I'm calculating challenge ratings for these guys, right? If I just take, let's see, if I have one monster, stand by. There is like, I think there's an XP, there are XP thresholds for monsters in here somewhere. Let's see if I can find them. I think they're here. Here we go. Experience points by challenge rating. You guys can all see that? Awesome. So a level 7 monster is 2,900 XP. So let's pop that in here. So we have one monster at 2,900 XP. Calculate. There we go. Now, what you're going to notice here is if I scroll down a little bit, that's easy. What that means is that if I have a party of level 7s and I throw them a level 7 monster, that's going to be easy for them. And not only is it easy, but it's insanely trivial because whenever you have a party of 5 adventurers and one big bad guy, there's something called action economy, which guarantees that that bad guy, even usually if he has legendary actions, is going to get destroyed really quickly in about 2 rounds because you're going to have players that are going to get to the big bad guy and they're going to be like, okay guys, this is the big bad guy. It's time to blow our wad. It's time to blow everything we have. And they're going to go full Hodor on them. And the paladin's going to use his smites. The fighters are going to use their action surges. The wizards are going to use their big bad spells. And that bad guy is going to go down like a sack of rocks. Sack of rocks? Is that an expression? I don't know. But we just made it one. So you want to be very careful when deploying a big solo bad guy against a party of adventurers. So even if we were to make this more difficult, let's just throw this up and let's say that we choose, now you said vampire, so let's just look at a vampire. Let's see if a vampire is a level appropriate challenge. So a vampire, dun dun dun, all right. A vampire is a challenge rating 13, which is 10,000 experience points. So we're doing a little impromptu encounter building here, and this is basically how I build my encounters. This is kind of a rough guideline though, because the math completely breaks down at about 8th level or so, in my opinion, in 5th edition. So this is rough guidelines, right? So, where am I at? I looked at chat and got distracted. So a vampire, sorry, stand by. A vampire is 10,000 XP. So let's pop over to here and let's pop in 10,000 XP and let's recalculate it. All right, now we're at deadly. Now I want you to look at this. This tells you the thresholds, okay? So basically, this is the threshold for an easy encounter, a medium encounter, a hard, or deadly. So a deadly encounter is at 8,500 adjusted experience points. Now for this vampire, this one vampire, against this 5 level 7 characters, the adjusted difficulty rating is 10,000 XP, which is a little bit above our deadly of 8,500, which is why this is classified as a deadly. Now, the only thing is that, again, we have the thing where you have the action economy, right, of this vampire. Now, let's just see. The vampire probably has legendary actions. It does have legendary actions. It can move, it can do an unarmed strike, it can do a bite, okay? And how many hit points does it have? Okay, here's the problem. Here's what I immediately see. It has 144 hit points, okay? And armor class 16. So armor class 16 is trivial. At level 7, your players will hit this thing almost every single time, especially your melee people and your wizards casting spells and stuff. Does it have? It has legendary resistance, so it's going to be a little bit resistant against spells. Now it does regenerate hit points, and it does have this thing where if you kill it, it can like turn into mist or something and escape and regenerate, I think. So yeah, it does. Misty Escape. When it drops to 0 hit points, it transforms into a cloud of mist, and then blah, 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 blah. And then it goes back to its resting place. So its resting place could be hidden away somewhere, difficult to find or something. But if your players are going against a vampire, they might be aware of this mechanic, and they might think of ways to get around this, right? So my point here is that I'm not sure. I mean, we'd have to see how this played out at a table, right? But my guess would be that 144 hit points, when your paladin runs into this undead, guess what your paladin's going to do? He's going to smite on every attack. And at level 7, a paladin's going to have 2 attacks. He's going to smite on both of them. There's a good chance your paladin is going to do 80 points of damage, perhaps, maybe more, in 1 round on this vampire. And your fighter is going to action surge and hit him a few times. My guess is that if your players manage to pin down this vampire, he's going to go down very, very fast, maybe 1 or 2 rounds. And he's going to get to do a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot. So if that's the type of fight you're looking for, just a little quick ground and pound. There's an MMA term for you. I do like martial arts and I've done jiu-jitsu and boxing and Muay Thai and crap like that a little bit. And by no means very good at it, but I do a little bit of it. So that's where that expression came from. But my guess is that you're going to have like a surround and pound, and this vampire is going to get his butt smoked. So my suggestion, always my suggestion for a sort of boss fight is to always have some sort of minion. Now, this isn't necessarily the 4th edition version of a minion where they have 1 hit point. It could be, right? But something that's actually along with this vampire to make the action economy swing a little bit more in his favor. And so because you want to build in some additional minions along with this vampire, it might not be a good idea to choose an enemy this powerful, because the moment we start putting in more monsters with this encounter, it's going to get that much more difficult for your players, right? For their characters. And so you might consider choosing a less powerful enemy and then giving him some minions, some mooks to go along with him. That would be my thought. I think this could work. I have often actually deployed what I would consider to be easy monsters against my players, and I have used things like the terrain and battle tactics to level the playing field. So if I were actually going to deploy a vampire against a party of level 7s, then I would want to make sure that the vampire is employing very good tactics and strategies to make sure that he doesn't get surrounded and pounded. And when he drops to maybe 50% hit points, he's escaping. He's getting out of there. He's going to regenerate, and he's going to come back and fight. Because here's the thing. This vampire, if you'll notice, he regenerates 20 hit points at the start of its turn. Okay? If it has at least 1 hit point, isn't in sunlight or running water. Okay? And if he takes radiant damage or damage from holy water, it doesn't function. So if I were running this vampire, I crap you not, against a bunch of high-level character or level 7s or whatever, what I would do is I would have him materialize or something, right? Attack them, and then escape, maybe in the next round even, depending on how much damage they're putting out, because he can turn into a gaseous form, I believe. They could, at least in 1 edition. Spider Climb, can they do a gaseous form? I thought they could. Shape Changer, I think they can turn into a mist form. Yep, they can turn into a cloud of mist. So what I would do is,
Yeah, it's immune to all non-magical damage. Level 7s are probably going to have definitely have magical stuff, so even Misty Escape might not work. What I might do is I might customize this vampire a little bit and have him so that his Misty Escape, he's like, maybe he can't even be harmed or something. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not sure exactly. But I would definitely have to do things to make this encounter more challenging if it's going to be a big bad boss fight, right? So definitely would have to do that. What I might consider doing, though, is I might consider dropping down... hold on, what am I looking for? Instead of having a vampire, I would consider doing something along the lines of... Let me see what page this is on. If you were to choose something along the lines of... If they're level 7s, let's choose something that's like a level 5. So that's like 1,800 experience points. And let's pop that in. So your big bad boss is a level 5 instead of like a really super high level. And then let's add some mooks in. Let's say that the minions that are along with him are level 2s. So there are 450 experience points. So let's say that there are about 5 of them, right? And we'll calculate that. And now you can see here that we have a hard encounter. And this will actually be fairly hard because we have a variety of creatures here, okay? And at level 7, I don't think they have spells like Banish, because another thing that you want to consider when you're building encounters is, this is a tactic my players use all the time. If I have one big bad boss and all of his minions, they will banish the big bad boss, get rid of him, kill all the minions, and then have the big bad boss come, and they'll do a surround and pound, and they just destroy him. So it's worth it when you're trying to... You don't always want to, every single encounter, anticipate all the things your players are going to do, because that's kind of sleazy, right? I wouldn't suggest doing that. But if you're trying to do a big bad boss fight, and you want it to be satisfying and dramatic and challenging, then you do want to think about some of the things your players are likely to do and kind of think ahead of that and consider how you can make that fight fun and challenging for them, if that's what you're going for. So I might pick something that's more like a CR like 5 and then have like a handful of mooks to go along with him. So you could definitely do a vampire. I think that could definitely work. In that case, you'd use terrain and other things to kind of even the fight up a little bit. But that could turn into a big surround and pound in my experience. Depending on your group, depending on your players, my players are all pretty good and they have really good tactics and stuff. So I have to be on my feet against them in order to be able to challenge them appropriately for something like a big bad boss fight, right? So there you go. I hope that helped out a little bit. Who was that? Game Master's Vault who asked that question. So there you go. And then I'll get a drink of coffee because I've been talking a lot, and then we'll look at another question because there were a couple other questions up here, and we still have to talk about flying characters in a party. So all right, and I want to take a look at something here out of curiosity. So that's interesting. All right, let's see. I'm just trying to read some stuff here. I know I had some questions up here, so I want to make sure I don't skip anybody. If it looks like I skipped your question, guys, make sure you drop it again. I don't mind you repeating it, just in case I may have missed it, because that might happen. Tactical Tokens says, stay in the game. A story that involves my character's motivations. Character connections with other players. Yes, absolutely. Things that will help your players be more interested in your game are involving their backstories and their motivations. I know anytime a player actually writes a backstory and stuff for his character, which I think is about 50-50. Some of my players do it, some don't. It doesn't matter to me whether you like doing it or not. But if the players do it, then I definitely try to incorporate something from their backstories into the game as much as possible. A lot of times that involves like a special adventure that I make based on their backstory that everybody goes on and does and completes. And that sort of thing definitely means something and helps to engage your character or engage your players. And it also tells them that you read their backstory and that you appreciate it and that you're creating something in the game based on it. And I think players appreciate that sort of thing. Let me see. DM, okay, Tactical Token says something that makes them leave the game. A DM who says no and railroading. Yeah. Yeah, someone who says no. So there is definitely a time and a place for saying no. if a player wants to do something that is game breaking or is clearly out of the spirit of the rules and just has problems, there's nothing wrong with saying no. But as much as possible, I try to say yes to my players. And you might do the classic yes but or yes and, right? There might be stipulations to it. But an outright no is usually you want to try to avoid it if at all possible. I know that the two things that I can remember regretting in my games, like big regrets that I have, were both cases where I told the player no. And then afterward I was like, I should have not said no. I should have asked him for clarification, right? Like, you wanted to do this, but how would you go about doing that? Because he might have a good reason or a good explanation for it that I didn't consider. And I could have actually said yes to it if I had better understood what he was thinking. So, Game Master's Vault says, nothing wrong with saying no, nothing wrong with railroading either, if that's what the players want. Absolutely. I mean, I agree. So I think railroading gets a bad rap, and I think a lot of people like sandboxing and stuff, but railroading can be okay if your players are okay with that. They might not care a whole lot, and they might be fine with just doing whatever you plan. I know that if you're going to run a true sandbox, in my opinion, a true sandbox is not simply not preparing for your game and then just making stuff up. Because if you don't prepare anything and you're just making stuff up, I don't know how satisfying a game experience that would be, in all honesty. Maybe there are DMs out there that can do that, and it's just as good as somebody who plans something out in detail. I know I can't do that. So in my opinion, sandboxing really means that you plan several adventures that the players could go on, and you're ready to run them. And no matter which one they pick, you're ready to run them. Okay, and that could be a lot of work for a dungeon master, and so that might not be for everyone. So I tend to my way of running it is I tend to have like I spend a lot of work making my adventures, and my players know that. I mean, I write books basically, like really big long notes. They're very elaborate notes that I make when I'm planning my adventures, and my players, I mean, I give them the hook, and they've never said no to one of my hooks. They always go on whatever the hook was. But the way that I approach the adventure, the sandbox part of my adventures, is that there's no one way to actually complete the adventure. I might say there's a castle here, and the mission is X, or there's a dungeon here, and your goal is to do this. And the players are welcome to approach that however they want. If they want, I once had players, there was a wooden fortification, and their goal was to, I think, defeat the bad guy in it. That's usually what the goal is. And my players went in, they fought a couple battles, and then they just started a fire in one of the corners of the building. And they burned the whole building down, all right? And the bad guys fled the fire, they took all of their loot and belongings with them, and they were camping out. And then the players attacked them as they were camping and ended up slaughtering them and then defeating the bad guy and getting all the loot. And so they had a completely... I never considered the fact they might try doing that. But when they decided to do that, I rolled with it, and I said yes to it, and the adventure turned out to be totally different than what I thought it might be. And that's kind of how I run my games, in the sense that there's X thing to do here, but you can go about accomplishing it any way you want to. And so that's kind of my compromise with like a sandbox, because, you know, that's kind of how I do it. My players have never complained, so I guess it's okay. But yeah. But a strict railroad where I've heard people tell me about what I consider to be the horror railroads, where the DM literally only allows you to do one thing in the game, right? Where there's only one way to do the adventure. There's only one very thing you can do, and if you don't do exactly what he anticipates you doing, he's like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, yes, you can do that because that's what I planned for. That sort of railroading is just mind-boggling. I wouldn't imagine anybody would want to play a game like that. So, definitely agree with that. Game Master Vault says CR doesn't matter. They just defeated 2 CR12 creatures in the last session. Yeah, dude. If they're defeating 2 CR12s together, especially, or they defeated a CR12, then if they're that powerful, they could do that. Obviously, then you might throw 2 vampires at them. Maybe it's like, you know, the male and female vampire. They're living their lives together, sucking blood or something, and they would be perfectly. You might throw that at them. So if they can handle that sort of stuff. So. Game Master Vault says go beyond deadly. CR doesn't matter. Yeah. The more I run Dungeons and Dragons, guys, especially at higher levels, like one of my groups is at level 12 or 13 right now, and the other is at level 20. CR means nothing at that point. It means nothing. You can build a group of encounters, but you really need to be able to adjust things on the fly, like adjusting hit points, adjusting battle tactics, adjusting stuff. I don't know. Because like the math is just totally doesn't work beyond like roughly level 8 or something, in my opinion. Totally breaks down. So, neat tool. Yeah, so tactical tokens, like I've used Kobold Fight Club a little bit, mostly for like random encounters and stuff like that, and it seemed pretty cool. But like for actually planning out like punching the numbers and stuff, I've always used this tool here, and I've just enjoyed it. But I haven't played around with Kobold Fight Club a whole lot to be able to give an honest comparison between the two, because I found one tool that worked really well for me, and I just stuck with it. So, a beholder could be a fun fight. 4 Elemental, what's going on, dude? Glad you could join us. Vampires are big jerks. You know, it's funny. I'm planning on running Curse of Strahd for my Sword Coast Guard group. We're probably not going to get to it for a while just because they're in the middle of a campaign right now, but I will be doing Curse of Strahd for them, which is there was a review that came out by Taking 20, the YouTube channel Taking 20, and I was very pleased to see that he rated Curse of Strahd as like the #1 module out there. I haven't played it yet. I've only read a little bit of it. So I can't comment on that, but I'm really looking forward to it. It should be lots of fun. Curse of Strahd. It's like a classic D&D adventure. So, let me see. Okay, I'm here now. We can start. Swan Master Flex has arrived. Awesome, Swan Master Flex. So, leave your questions. Hashtag all caps question if you guys got questions, and I will be answering them. I think I have churned through all of the current questions. If you left a question, I didn't answer it yet, please drop it again because I may have missed it. It's entirely possible. So, and then... So Game Master's Vault says that his party would make quicker work of the 6 lower critters versus the vampire. Interesting. I mean, that's totally legitimate, dude. That's like knowing your players and knowing what they're capable of. I know that, I think my players would be the opposite of that. But if you know that your players would make quick work of the low-level things, then build for high levels. You know, it's possible too. I mean, your players, they might have different tactics than my players use. You almost assuredly do things differently as a dungeon master than I do. So the way you do things might make it so that lower-level creatures like that are easier to deal with than like one higher-level creature. So if you know from experience what works best for your group, then absolutely ignore everything I just said and do it what works best for you. I think that's the beautiful thing. I mean, no one game or group is the same, right? And different things work better or worse at different tables. And so, yeah, ignore what I said. Go with the vampire. All right, rock and roll. Swanmaster Flex says, I should just call you Mr. Swan or something, because I'm going to keep mispronouncing your name. Sorry. I have such a good sandbox game going right now. Spent a long year working on the world, and my players are trying to play all the time and want to bring in another player. Awesome. That's cool, dude. How many players do you have, Sawmaster Flex? Just out of curiosity. He says, most of my encounters, I tend to homebrew most of the monsters with quick stats and a description, have reinforcements in case they ROFL stomp my encounter and still want to fight. Awesome. Yeah, that is interesting. That's a pretty cool mechanic, dude. So there are like reinforcements just in case a battle is like way too easy or something. That's really cool. And that's an interesting too, because waves, bringing in waves of monsters is a really good tactic to use in your fights as well, because if you have like your players come into a room and there's like 2 monsters here and they're like, oh, we know what we're doing. All right, go engage those guys, and then the casters and the archers stay in back, and you guys go beat them up. And then you have a wave come in, and it might be someone that comes from behind, or it might just be some other people that reveal themselves and come in. That changes the dynamics of the battle, and they have to reassess their tactics in that battle. And so having waves is a really good thing to do. I do this. I don't do it super often, because if your players always anticipate the same thing, oh, there are going to be 3 waves in every combat or every boss fight, then it kind of loses, I think, its novelty. But every so often to have waves or have enemies reveal themselves that they didn't think were there is a really cool thing. You definitely want to. That's a good tactic. Yeah, I like that. All right, let's keep reading here. Tactical Tokens has a question. Awesome. I'm running out of coffee. I'm getting low on coffee. And it's 9:10. Woo! Flying through here. And I got to talk about flying characters still. And we'll get to that in a second. Because we're stopping at 10 tonight. So everybody can get some sleep. There, I just finished my coffee. So we'll probably have to go fill that up in a second. All right. Tactical Tokens says, any ideas for facilitating roleplay between players out of session or between sessions? Yeah, I mean, I think that off the top of my head, Tactical Tokens, I would probably set up some sort of forum, or you might go onto Reddit and create a subreddit where people can like do postings and stuff like that. You could probably do something on Facebook, maybe a private Facebook group where you guys can like post back and forth and do role playing like that. You might do something like, I mean, shoot, you could leverage one of these like social media things like Snapchat, and like that way you're literally like role playing to the camera, and then other people can do that stuff. That would be interesting. I wonder how that would work. Like, you literally have, I don't know how Snapchat works a whole lot. I haven't used it but a couple times, just to realize that I didn't particularly care for it. But you might have a little group or something set up in your Snapchat thing where like you guys just role play back and forth over video, which I think would be interesting, because if you're just posting somewhere, then you're limited to just text. And when we communicate with other people, the words we use are like 20% of our communication. And then the other like 60% of the communication is like the tone of your voice and whatnot. Let's just say I'm making up numbers here. I read some stats not too long ago about this that were very interesting. But then another part of how we communicate is like our body motions and our body language and stuff like that. And so by using video on something like Snapchat or something like that, you're going to be able to role play a whole lot more effectively than if you were just, I'm like, holding, this is my phone, I'm like Snapchatting on my phone or something, right? That would be a lot more effective for role playing outside of a game session, I think, than just doing it on like some sort of post thing. So that's my idea. I just kind of came up with that on the spot. That might be good advice, that might be bad advice, but some sort of video where you can see their face and their voices, I think, might be interesting. Especially if it could be some sort of permanent thing. I wonder if there's a place to do that. I don't know, but there's an idea for you. So I hope that's helpful. I don't personally do any sort of role play stuff outside of game sessions because I'm so crazy busy. But that, if your players are that giddy up and go about it, right, then that would be really fun. So yeah, I would give something like that a try. All right, Swanmaster Flex says Swan is an acceptable call sign. All right, thanks, buddy. Swan, I'll just call you Swan. He has 4 players going on 5. Awesome. One is a little flaky, but it's because of work. All right, cool. I think in my experience, 4 players is like the sweet spot. I love having 4 players. It's a really good sized group. The only reason I actually have 5 players in all of my groups, except for one of them, which has 6. And one has 4. Okay, let me rephrase that question or that statement. I have 5 players in 2 of my groups. One group has 6 players, and the other group has 4 players. The reason I like 5, though, is that it deals with absences super, super well. If you have, first of all, I run my games in such a way that we play whether someone can show up or not, right? We have a set reoccurring schedule, which is usually every other week, and whoever shows up plays, right? And people very rarely miss the games, so which is great. So basically, if you have 5 regular players, make sure my hand is in the camera here. You have 5 regular players, and one person doesn't show up. You have 4 players, which I consider to be the best number of players from me, my personal running games crap, right? Now, if you start out with 4 players, and one player doesn't show up, you got 3 now, which is starting to get on the light side. 3 is like, for my games, is the bare minimum, right? I have 5 players. If 2 people can't make it and we have 3, we still play the game. If another person can't make it and there's 2, that's just too few to run the game, especially considering that I designed my games to be run with 5 players, right? Or 5 characters. And if you only got 2, that's going to be challenging. Even if those 2 are playing their PCs, you're going to have a challenging game. Right, so I think 4 is golden. I use 5 because it deals with absences very well. There we go. There's my little plug about the perfect or the good number of players for a game, which might vary, right? I mean, that could be something that's totally... Some people like playing with like 8 to 10 people, which I think is crazy. But they do it, and I probably like it, so there you go. Anyway. Tactical Tokens says, make custom Snapchat filters for your characters. Oh, that'd be interesting. Is that where they do the thing where they have like the little like dog faces and like the flowery stuff going through the hairline and stuff like that? I don't know. I don't use Snapchat, so I don't know how all that works. So, all right, looks like I got to the end of the chat. So I will start talking about flying characters. But you know what? We need to get some coffee. So before we talk about flying characters, I'm going to take a brief intermission. And I apologize, this is the same intermission image that I showed last time we had a live stream. I haven't had a... Oh, Fierce Mushroom is here. What's up, Fierce? How you doing, man? Fierce has joined us. You joined us just in time, Fierce, to go on intermission, and I will be right back. There we go. All right, rock and roll. I have returned, and I have coffee, so that's good. All right, I think we actually had a question in here. Tactical Tokens had a question. Ever been in a co-DM or dual DM game? I have not. I have never been in one of those. I've always just been the DM or been a player. So I had someone ask me once, one of my cats down here rubbing against me. Orange. Orange is one of my cats. He's awesome. He's a big tubby guy with a bald belly because he like has this thing where he licks his belly all the time, so there's no hair on it. That's awesome. Anyway, it's probably not why we're here to talk about my cat. So, somebody asked me once how I would go about co-DMing a game, and I'm sure there's other ways to do this, but my thought was to just take turns. Like, you run an adventure. Like, if there's an ongoing campaign, you might run an adventure, and the other DM is a player, and then when that adventure is over, you switch, and you become a player, and he becomes a DM. You might do it that way. I do not know how... If you have a normal group of like 5 players or something, I don't know how you could have 2 DMs. I don't know how that would work. I don't have any experience with that, and so I don't really want to comment too much on it. I do know that I was once a player in a game, and I was only a player for like 2 or 3 sessions, where they were kind of doing a co-DM thing. It was a normal size group of players, so they didn't really need 2 DMs. Because I've heard of co-DMs when you have lots of players, like a big group of 10, where you might have 2 DMs, and maybe the DM, there's like a main DM who is running the game, and then the other co-DM is like his like co-pilot or something, is like helping facilitate other stuff to make sure everything runs smoothly. But like in the game that I was in, the the main DM was handling all of the like story elements and decisions and stuff, and the only thing that the hold on a second. Oh man, I gotta fix this. My cat's walking near my power strip. I had the same problem last time, and somebody was like, you should like zip tie your power strip up higher, and I was like, yes, that's a great idea, and I never did it. And so now I have a cat walking near my power strip, and I'm afraid he's gonna step on it and turn everything off, which would be bad. Anyway, what was I gonna say? The way they were co-DMing was the main DM was running the story elements, making all the decisions and stuff, and the other DM, the guy who was learning how to DM, was only running the monsters in combat. So he was just running the monsters in combat, which is similar to running a player character in combat with a few differences and stuff. So I wasn't quite sure how that would help that DM to learn how to play. That seemed like it would just help him to learn how to run monsters in combat, which is just different stat blocks, but that's not really that tough to do in my opinion. So I don't know. That's what I experienced actually in person, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think you can tell that by the way I'm talking about it. Not as a way to learn how to DM. I mean, the best way, in my opinion, to learn how to DM would probably be ideally to be a player for a little bit first, learn the rules and stuff, kind of observe how the other DM does it, maybe watch other DMs online that are running real D&D games, not shows, and then actually just do DMing on your own. Full bore, just go and DM. So but that's not the question that was asked. So let's see. We got some other people here. Oh, Yoda Slayer, what's going on, dude? Good to see you, man. Glad to have you join us. Let me see. Oh, some people started talking about flying. Awesome. We're gonna talk about flying. Yeah. So let me see. Swamaster Swan says, I think most flying should have exhaustion mechanics built into it, or be a resource that depletes until you rest. That's a really good point. That's a really good point, dude, because like you can't fly forever, right? I don't know. Birds. How long can a bird fly before resting? This would be interesting, right? If it can fly for like a full 8 hours before resting, that's something, right? However, I imagine that the sort of flying you would do in combat is much different than the sort of like casual flying. Imagine this. Like, so I mentioned this before, but I've done some jujitsu and stuff like that, and I've done like martial arts and crap like that. So like, if I'm just simply walking, I can walk nonstop for quite a long time. However, if I get into, especially if I get into hand-to-hand combat where you're grappling and stuff, you get tired fast. Oh my gosh, you get so tired. If you grapple someone just for like 30 seconds or something, full force, that is a massive exertion. That's why wrestlers have just crazy strength, okay? So like if you're flying in combat, you're probably going to get your wings and your muscles and stuff are going to get tired a lot faster. But you could say the same thing for people that are just fighting in combat, right? Swinging swords and moving quickly and dodging and all this kind of stuff is going to be very exerting as well. So there's an argument to be made there, I think, for exhaustion and stuff while flying. I don't know how fun it would be for players and stuff, because a lot of the rules that we have in Dungeons and Dragons a lot of them are not super realistic. Okay, they're there for game mechanics so that the game runs smoothly and is enjoyable and fun. So that's always something to consider. And also, whenever I am considering changing the rules a little bit, to adjust things, especially if I'm adding rules, I always do like a cost-benefit analysis. Is the added logistics of adding this rule, is the benefit that I'm going to get for that justify the added game mechanic? Sorry, I'm coughing a lot. Whenever you add a game mechanic that increases the rule base, if you're not getting more benefit from it than the cost of actually introducing that game mechanic, then don't add the game mechanic, right? For instance, one of the game mechanics that I don't like, that I just ignore for all intents and purposes, is carrying capacity, encumbrance, how much stuff you're carrying, because is it realistic to carry around a dragon horde with you? No, it's not. But is it interesting and fun to calculate out how much stuff you're carrying, spending a half an hour or something to figure all that out? That's not interesting or fun for me or for my players, so I throw that out. No, your group might enjoy doing that. You might like getting into the fiddly bits like that, and that's totally sweet if you guys all enjoy that. But that's an example to me of where a game mechanic does not the benefit you get from that game mechanic does not outweigh the cost, because for me, something like that has a crazy huge cost and is not fun, and so I just don't do that sort of thing. There you go. There's a little tangent for you. All right, and then let's see. Oh yes, Tactical Token says we need some on-hold intermission music. You are so right. I actually thought about that earlier, a little bit ago, when I was getting ready for the stream, but I didn't have enough time to find some music to put on. But that's a really good idea. I needed to do that for next time. And some music that won't get me like a copyright strike or something. Because you gotta be careful about that stuff. Yeah, Fierce says that he runs a lot of campaigns with lots of verticality, so flying is pretty common. Yeah, cats love power strips. They do. I was video editing once, and like my cat just stepped on it, and everything went black. And I don't think I lost a whole lot because I'm like very like I'm always saving constantly when I'm video editing. So, but it was annoying. Swammaster Flex says most magic items I give deplete mana in order to fly. I don't play with normal spells mana system, okay? It works for my game really well, but I get it. But for low level flying, I like it. Yeah, that sounds cool, dude. Yoda Slayer, I have been in one co-DM game and we had 14 players. Wow, that's crazy. Basically, it was 2 players who had notes about what they were supposed to talk about and what the other was supposed to talk about. Okay, cool. So it almost sounds like you guys were taking turns or something while they were running the game, perhaps? My cat Marvin has turned off computers on multiple occasions. Yeah, that's awesome. Yoda Slayer says they both joined in on dialogue. It was fun, but I'll never DM in a co-DM game. Yeah, I imagine that would be challenging. Ah, sweet. Josh. Yeah. Yep. The new webcam. It is a Logitech. What'd you get me, man? 920. Josh hooked me up with a webcam because I was previously using my phone to do live streams, and it was horrible. And it was live streaming over Wi-Fi, which was like really bad laggy quality and stuff like that. So now I have an actual legitimate cool webcam. Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate that. He also got me a laptop, which is nuts. So I'm enjoying that as well. So thanks, buddy, for hooking me up. I really appreciate that. Totally. You have no idea. So, yeah, it got confusing. I imagine it gets confusing. When you have that many players, I mean, when you have something like 14 players, I mean, I imagine the thing that would get confusing is all of the side conversations, right? And so the Dungeon Master is explaining something, and are you really going to have all 14 players paying attention to you? I don't think so. And then you're going to have to repeat things, and there's side conversations which you have to talk over and stuff like that. I imagine that would be difficult, right? I have this thing that, like, when my players, like, I was a teacher. I used to be a teacher. I was a teacher for 4 years down in Central America. And I had this thing I would use with my students. When my students would, like, talk, when they weren't supposed to be talking, I would just give them this stare, this, like, really, like, I wasn't trying to be mean or anything. It was just this very serious, I'm staring at you because you're talking. And my students would go, and, like, I do this with my players, too. Like, if they're, like, talking, I don't try to talk over my players, right? If they're talking or something and like I need the floor because I'm running the game or whatever, then I'll just be quiet and I'll just stare at them. And like, I didn't realize this until recently, but one of my players, Ted, told me that it's like this death stare, like I'm going to kill you if you don't stop talking stare. That's not my intent. I'm just like, I'm giving them the teacher look, I think. And like, but it quiets them down like right away. It works really well. So, I'm a pretty good-natured guy, so but I guess my be quiet stare is pretty intimidating. So there you go. All right, cool. Let's talk about. I don't think I have any more questions, so let's talk about flying characters. Let's do this. Flying characters in the game. So the question from Michael on Facebook was what's the best way to deal with a party of flying characters? So that's what we're going to talk about. Feel free to comment down in the chat. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are too, because I think a lot of this shouldn't just be me, like, telling you what I think, right? I want to know what you guys think, because you guys probably have good ideas, too, I would imagine. So, drink some coffee, and we'll talk about this. All right, so, first thing. I'm going to get distracted by chat all the time. I'll catch up on the chat in a second. Flying characters, because I've been teasing flying characters this whole time. So, flying characters. If you are running a game where everything takes place outdoors, then that is probably when you're going to have the most difficulty with flying characters, right? Because your flying characters, we're assuming, by the way, that everybody can fly. All the PCs can fly. That's the supposition that we're making. If all of your characters are flying, right, then they have elevation. They can use ranged attacks and stuff on creatures below, right? And so if they're encountering things out in the open plain, and those creatures, they can't fly, then the players are just going to be able to rain down havoc on them. Now, basic countermeasures to this. I mean, your creatures should have ranged attacks as well, especially if they're like, humanoids. They're going to have bows and crossbows, and they're going to be spellcasters with things. And so they're going to be able to respond and shoot back at them. So you basically got even Steven. But you really should very rarely have battles occur out in like open plains where there's no cover. There's usually some sort of cover to be had. So if you're in a forest, even flying characters in a forest, if they're above the canopy, aren't going to be able to shoot anything down in the forest itself. And even if you have spotty trees, enemies on the ground can take cover underneath trees, underneath the canopy of trees, or behind the trunks of trees. If there are bushes, they can get like concealment, like 3/4 cover or something if they're hiding in bushes. If the players are flying over here and there's like a rock or something down here, they can hide behind the rock and break line of sight. So one of the basic ways to deal with like a party of flying PCs is just simply to have your enemies fight intelligently, to use their brains, take cover. You don't just stand out in the open and let people destroy you. You fight intelligently. You hide behind the rock. You pop out and shoot, and then you hide back again. I mean, just basic tactics are going to, make this whole flying outdoors thing more manageable. And the other thing, too, is that flying characters are very vulnerable. They have no cover or anything up there. They're way out in the open, so it's, you got clear shots to them. There's nowhere to take cover. And things like being able to knock them prone. If a flying enemy is knocked prone, it plummets to the ground, right? Immediately. You go down 500 feet per round, and you're going to take falling damage. And then if you're the only one on the ground, the enemies could just surround you or something too. And so knocking things prone is a big thing. Also, as characters gain levels and they get more renown and fame throughout the game world, people are going to know about them. Like, level 10 PCs walking around are like heroes in the game. They have fame. People know about them. They talk about them. And if they can all fly, right, that means that not only do like the townsfolk know about them, but the enemies probably hear about them as well. So if there's a big bad in your group, he knows that your players or your characters can all fly, and he knows what he's dealing with, and so he can create strategies and tactics to deal with them, right? And then deploy his monsters or his minions and stuff so that they have countermeasures to flying characters. I mean, they might do something very simple, such as construct big, huge like shields or like wooden things to give them cover. And they basically can just walk around with these things and get cover from attacks from above and then pop out and shoot. I don't know. You could probably think of more creative things than that. But the point is that enemies who know about flying characters could figure out ways to deal with them, right? As opposed to just sit on the ground and be like, oh, we're getting shot and we can't do anything. So, other ways to deal with flying characters. I mentioned the whole out of doors thing to begin with, but I don't usually have much of my game transpire out of doors. Most of my adventures take place inside. Now that might be inside of a castle, it might be inside of buildings, it might be in dungeons, right? Cave complexes or legitimate underground dungeons, perhaps a temple or something. There might be an above side temple or a down below temple. Once you have things taking place indoors, then most of the problems of dealing with flying characters becomes pretty moot, right? Because most ceilings are not much higher than 10 feet, which means that if you have the character is flying here and there's an enemy here, that enemy can hit him even though he's flying. And so a lot of the advantages of flying are lost when you're inside. Now, some rooms are going to have higher ceilings, right? And they're going to be able to fly up above and do things. Absolutely, but those rooms are going to have cover in them. So your enemies can use certain tactics. Like you might have, there's a high room and your characters are flying all up above. The enemies are ducking through doorways, right? And then they pop out and shoot at them and then pop back through the doorway, right? And pop out and shoot and pop back through the doorway. So your enemies can use intelligent tactics again so that they are dealing. I mean, these are not DM screw jobs. These are not ways that you're invalidating the fact that your players can fly, right? This is role-playing enemies intelligently. This is what enemies would actually do. Any enemy that has an intelligence of like 8 or above, because 8 to 10 is average human intelligence. And most humans, if you are getting shot at from above and there's a doorway over here or there's a table you can duck under, you're going to take cover, right? You're not just going to sit there like a duck in a shooting gallery. I don't know if that's an expression, but I just made it up. So we're just talking about using intelligent tactics, okay? And this is just using your standard array of monsters and stuff that you might find in a pre-generated module. We're not even talking about like using flying creatures, because obviously if the PCs can all fly, you could start throwing flying creatures at them, but you don't have to do that. There are ways to, deal with them in a way that you don't have to like customize your entire campaign for them as well, right? And so I think that just having things happen indoors and having your enemies use intelligent tactics is probably the very best way to deal with flying creatures, in my opinion. So there are some thoughts on dealing with flying characters. I would not first of all, I would do a couple things. If you're considering running, or you're okay with a campaign where everybody can fly, then if you walk into it knowing that everybody's going to be flying, then you can prepare responsibly for it and you can think through some things. In my experience, though, not everybody will be able to fly. Usually, you're only going to have maybe 1 or 2 characters that decide they want to have wings and are able to fly and whatnot. And in that case, there's nothing even really to worry about there. It'll come in handy in a couple spots where they can fly up somewhere with a rope and then tie a rope off so people can climb up and get places easier. But it's not generally going to be a problem. Now, if you have your players encounter flying mounts, this is something that my players, especially in the Sword Coast Guard group, always kind of make comments about. But at one point in time, they all had hippogriffs, and they were all able to fly on their hippogriffs. Here's the thing, though. They were getting pretty high in level, so it was hard to hit them, and they had a lot of hit points and whatnot. But their hippogriffs did not have a lot of hit points, and their hippogriffs did not have any armor on. And so when I had bad guys fighting against them, flying on their hippogriffs, I'd go for a couple rounds of them trying to hit the actual players themselves. But once it was obvious that it was really hard to hit the players, I'd have the enemies start targeting their hippogriffs. And their hippogriffs would go down like rocks, and then they would plummet and fall and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, that's not screwing them over. That's not like just stealing away their mounts. That's role-playing the enemies intelligently. If you have a heavily armored fighter riding an unarmored hippogriff, and this fighter is just raining down arrows at you, you're obviously going to try to, you might want to try to not kill the hippogriff because you might want to catch him to use him for later. But if it comes down to you dying or you shooting that hippogriff down so you can get at that fighter, then you're going to shoot the hippogriff down. And so that's just a matter of role-playing enemies intelligently, in my opinion. So, all right, I'm going to look at chat now and see what people are saying on chat. All right. I'll have to scroll up a little bit here. We were talking about co-DMing and lots of players and stuff. And Yoda Slayer said the side conversations were awful. But the worst was combat. There were people who didn't even get a turn sometimes, and the 2 that didn't end round 1 drug on for so long. Yeah, side conversations bad. Yeah, combat would be crazy. Can you imagine? So here's the thing. When we have combat with just 5 players in my group, it's pretty normal. I mean, they're pretty high level, so combats take a little bit longer at higher levels. But it's pretty normal for one combat to last for an hour, and that's with 5 players. Can you imagine how long a combat would take if you had 14 players? Oh my gosh, you could be a half an hour or more on one round, okay? Maybe longer than that. And while one person is taking his turn, you've got 13 other players who aren't active, right, and who are waiting for their turn. Do you really think they're going to all be paying attention and waiting anxiously? Or are they going to start having side conversations and missing what's going on? And then when it gets to their turn, they're like, "Oh wait, what's going on?" And then they gotta get caught back up on what's going on. And then you got to re-explain things. They got to look at the mini map. If you're doing theater of the mind and they're not paying attention in combat, then you got to like recap to them everything that just happened. That could get really unmanageable. I mean, you'd have to either run a really tight ship, right, with making sure people are paying attention. But in all honesty, in my opinion, if you have a group of 14 players, okay, and you have 2 DMs and they're co-DMing it, the best solution, in my opinion, would be to split that group into 2 groups and have each dungeon master have 7 players and then just run 2 separate games. That seems to be that I think would be much more fun for the players than to run a big, huge group. And it's all about fun for the players, right? I mean, yeah, DM work and blah, 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 blah. It's going to be easier for the DM. But ultimately, as a dungeon master, what we're trying to do is run an awesome, fun game for our players. And I definitely think that, in my personal experience and opinion, a smaller group is probably going to be much more fun for your players because they're not going to be waiting very long to take their turns in combat. They're not going to be waiting very long to get a spotlight at the table. If you have an NPC that they're interacting with, if you have 4 players interacting with one NPC or a handful of NPCs, they're going to get to take turns talking to this NPC. But if you have 13 players, right, most of them are not going to be able to interact at all, or if they are, they're going to be waiting their turn, and most likely you're going to have maybe a couple players that are very outspoken and going to talk a lot, and then there are going to be some more shy players who just don't speak up and they don't usually participate because they just can't get a word in. And so I'm probably painting a really bad picture of it, but I see so many difficulties involved with lots of players. And if somebody does it and has done it really well and has seen it done super well and can do it, then, I mean, that's awesome. You know, I can't do that. I don't think I would be able to do that. It would be very challenging to make it run smoothly and to be super, super fun for all the players. Every time that I've heard of a player in a large group like that, they've always usually said that I didn't like it and I either left the group or I would never play in a group like that again. So far that's been my experience. And if that's wrong, I mean, this is my opinion, right? All right. We're at 9:40 my time, which means we got 20 minutes left to go. So let's see what we got in the chat. If you guys got questions, please let me know what your questions are, and we will talk about questions. If I get to the end of the chat, then we will go over to Facebook, and we'll just scroll through Facebook. That could be fun. I love my friend John and I at work have lots of fun talking about Facebook comments and stuff. There's some really crazy stuff that goes on Facebook, guys. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Backburners. Hey, what's going on, Backburners? Glad you could join us. I am just seeing your question now, so we'll get you an answer. Backburners says, my group is confused whether a rogue is considered hide, i.e. sneak attack, in the surprise round. So here's the thing. A rogue gets sneak attack. And I'm just going to, if I get this wrong, I apologize. But there are a few conditions in which a rogue gets sneak attack. One is that he has advantage on the die roll, okay, and doesn't have disadvantage. Or if an ally is within 5 feet of the enemy he's attacking. And as long as those 2 conditions are satisfied, then your rogue gets sneak attack. But you know what? Let's just pop over it. Let me pull up the monster manual, and we'll just look and see what the monster manual says. Because I've been wrong before about some of these things, and I would hate to misquote this and, like, lead somebody astray. So we're going to pull up the monster manual, and we are going to go to standby. We're almost there. So we're in the monster manual here, and we're going to go to the rogue class. That's the races. Rogue. Here's rogue. And let's go to where it talks about sneak attack, and we will get an answer for backburner here. There we go. I think you can all see this. So, beginning of first level, you blah, 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 once per turn, blah, 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 blah. So you have to have a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon. Okay. You deal an extra 1d6 damage to one creature you hit with an attack if you have advantage. So that's one of the conditions. You have to have advantage. But then it says you don't need advantage on the attack roll if another enemy of the target is within 5 feet of it. Okay, so that was the other thing that I mentioned. that enemy isn't incapacitated and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. So you can't have disadvantage on the attack roll. And then the amount of damage increases. So as long as you either have advantage or an enemy is within 5 feet of it, you get sneak attack. There's nothing in the rule about sneak attack about surprise rounds. Okay? So I would say that if you got a surprise round and the enemies were not aware of your presence, then you're basically attacking from a hidden position. They were unaware of you. Okay? So the ruling, it's a gray area. I think this is a gray area. You could either say that the rogue gets sneak attack because he was getting a surprise round and he's kind of hidden and the enemy's like, oh, whoa, they're just seeing you. Or you could say that they don't because you don't specifically like follow those rules right there. There's also so I think it's a gray area, to be honest with you. There are a lot of things in 5th edition that are gray areas, and I don't know that it's super clear, but I do know that there is a special type of assassin here that says, well, that's about critical hits though. That has nothing to do with sneak attack. So I think my ruling would probably, backburner, would probably be that I would probably say yes. In a surprise round, you get sneak attack damage. I think I'd probably go with that. But I think that's just a DM ruling. I don't think the rules are super clear about that. So I would say yes because it makes sense to me that a rogue, if he gets the drop on an enemy in a surprise round, he would be able to do a sneak attack. Get sneak attack damage. That's my personal opinion. I'd say yes on that. But I don't think it's super clear in the rules. So there you go. I hope that helps a little bit. Definitely a gray area, though. The DM could go either way. Fierce Mushroom says the best way to deal with parties of flying is to make it commonplace. Prevents the party from just escaping to the sky. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And Yoda Slayer says sneak attack doesn't require a rogue to be hidden in 5th edition. But to fully answer your question, if the surprise round is a result of a hide action by the rogue, yes. If he, for any reason, has advantage, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with that, Yoda. Especially if he's hidden. If a rogue is hidden, then he gets he will get advantage on his attack roll. A hidden opponent gets advantage on an attack. Okay? So if the rogue is hidden, he will absolutely get advantage on the attack, and by getting advantage, he gets sneak attack. So that's how that would work. Fierce says you could give disadvantage on attacks to flying characters, considering you're firing a bow while moving at another moving target without stable ground. You could say that, Fierce. My counter argument to that, just to play devil's advocate, would be that in any combat, many players are probably moving around, and even if you're occupying the same 5-foot square in hand-to-hand combat, you're still kind of moving around, dodging and stuff like that. And you're probably, even if you're firing your bow, you're probably gonna like pull your bow back and fire, and then you're gonna move to the side and dodge around as other people are shooting at you. So, but I imagine that flying, you can't, unless you have the hover, you literally have to be flying around. So I don't think that it would be unreasonable to say flying creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls. The only problem with that also, I think, is that anytime I make a ruling in my games, the ruling applies not only to the players, but it applies to me, the Dungeon Master. So the question would be, if I tell the players they all have disadvantage on their attack rolls when flying, that means that any flying creature I have would have disadvantage on its attack rolls. And I think the other thing, too, that I want to mention is that when I'm running my games, I want to make sure my players are having fun. And so whenever I consider introducing a special rule, a house rule that's not in the book, one of my big considerations is, will the addition of this rule be fun for my players? And if I had players that could all fly, I guarantee you that telling them that their attack rolls while flying will have disadvantage would not be fun for them. Not only would it not be fun for them, but it would almost universally, they would tell me, okay, then I'm not going to play a flying character, because that is a very big disadvantage to have disadvantage while you're flying. So I'm not trying to crap on your idea, man. I really am not. I'm just kind of thinking things through, right? Thinking everything through so that we can come to make really, when you think things through all the way, then you usually tend to make better decisions and stuff like that. So I'm just playing devil's advocate to you. I'm not trying to say that that's a bad idea. I realize you guys are just throwing out ideas. So anyway, I hope I didn't dig a big hole there. Let me see. What do we got going on here? Fierce says, I ran a campaign for 6 people, and it was starting to drag during combat. I think my limit is probably 5. Yeah, I'm with you, Fierce. My limit is 5 for sure, and 4 is my personal preference. Yoda Slayer says, I thought they were going to split. It was a one-shot, and a lot of people showed up, but apparently they had prepared a co-DM if we had too many players to one game table. Yoda Slayer currently runs a 10 to 11 person game, but I have a drop-in, drop-out system. They have like weird schedules. I've yet to have more than 6 at once, and we have exactly 1 person who takes note. Cool. Eastern Standard Time. Yep, that's true. Fun stuff on Facebook. You mean TPK? Dude, like seriously, you know what? We need to go over to Facebook. Are there any more questions here? We have one more question. I want to go over to Facebook for a second, and we're going to look at Facebook together, guys, because I have a lot of fun reading through some of the Facebook stuff that goes on. I have a lot of sad fun reading through some of the advice that people give on Facebook, which is one of the reasons I had that rant video that I put out a little bit ago, because sometimes the advice you read on here is just like, oh my gosh, insanely bad. Let me see. Hey, Tyler, Micah, what's going on, dude? I hope I pronounced your last name right. He says, I've run a couple games in my classrooms to introduce my students to the game. I had groups of 4 play one character, and they had come up with what their character would do as a group. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting, dude. Well, hey, first of all, thanks a lot for being a teacher, man. I was a teacher for 4 years, and it is tons of work, but it is super rewarding. Like, the thing I loved about being a teacher was just the sense that, like, I was having an impact on these kids' lives, that I was helping to, like, influence them for the better, and they would just be better off in the world as a result of, like, what I was teaching them and the influence I was having on them. So thanks a lot, man, for it's a sacrifice. Being a teacher is a sacrifice because it doesn't pay very well compared to other jobs that you might take. And a lot of times you are not just putting in your standard hours as a teacher. You're taking stuff home with you. You're grading. I was an English teacher and a math teacher. And for English, like papers and stuff that you have to read and then grade and all this kind of stuff, lots and lots of work. So I really appreciate the fact that you're doing that. And that you're introducing your students to the game. Oh, that's so awesome. D&D is such a great thing. Creativity and helps develop social skills and stuff. And these are awesome things for students, for anybody to learn, actually. So awesome. That's really cool, dude. Let me see. They get advantage by taking a, yeah. If a rogue can as a bonus action take the hide, and then it's in the rules. I won't find it right now for the sake of time. But if you're a hidden character, if you're hidden, then you get advantage on your attack rolls. But the thing is that rogues almost always get sneak attack. Like, a well-played rogue will always get sneak attack on his attack rolls because you're going to have melee characters that go up and engage the enemies, and a rogue will always attack an enemy that's engaged by one of his allies, and thereby get sneak attack. So the game mechanics for 5th edition are really built around a rogue almost always getting sneak attack, and that puts it on par DPS-wise with other, like, melee characters or other, like, fighter characters. And so there's nothing wrong with a rogue always getting sneak attack. I mean, he should be mostly getting sneak attack. Otherwise, he, like, really lags behind in DPS and stuff like that. And so I don't really have a problem with that. So one other question here. Oscar. Hey, Oscar, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it. He says, have run Curse of Strahd, and if so, did you use the fog to railroad the PC to Death House? So I have not used Curse of Strahd. I've not run it yet. I am planning on running it. And here's the thing. Here would be my approach on the module. If I'm running a module for my players, I would probably have a session 0 where I would sit down with my players and I would tell my players, hey guys, I want to run this module. Okay? And part of running the module means that we're running the module. So there are certain adventures in the module that are designed to be played by you guys. And so if you all want to run this module, then I want to run the module with you, which means that you would run these adventures. Okay? So you're almost basically having a session 0 with your players, and you're asking for permission to railroad them. In other words, guys, I want to run the module. If you guys want to run the module, then the expectation is that we're actually going to play the adventures in it, which means that I, as the DM, am going to guide you to those adventures for you to play them. And so as long as you have a session 0 and there's a common understanding of what the game's going to be like, then I would have no problem at all using the fog that I'm a little bit familiar with to guide the players to something like the Death House. So that, for instance, you know, the fog is closing around them and the only place for them to go is to Death House. So as long as your players are bought in on the idea of running that module, then I don't see a problem with that. Now, if your players don't like the idea of that and they want like an open game world and they want to kind of just do whatever, then it's possible that a module might not be the best solution. Or you would pick like a sandboxy module. Actually, Curse of Strahd is fairly sandboxy, I've been told, as is Princes of the Apocalypse, but I could go on like a half-hour tirade about Prince of the Apocalypse, and it's not really sandboxy. It's really bad sandboxy. I've heard that Storm King's Thunder is a little bit sandboxy, but anyway, that's my answer to that question, Oscar. Tyler says, yep, you pretty much nailed it. Very rewarding. I've built D&D into my English curriculum. I have a high anxiety program, and it's amazing to see them come out of their shells through D&D. I know, dude. Totally. I have players that have told me that, like, Dungeons & Dragons is the thing that, like, helps them get through their weeks, right? It helps them cope with their real lives. I mean, that's just... They tell you that your games and being with all of these players and having fun together is the thing that helps me cope with my life. And to know that you are providing that sort of value and benefit to people, it's not just getting together and having fun. You're actually helping them with their lives to live better lives. That is amazing. And that's one of the reasons I'm a dungeon master, for sure. All right, we got like just a few minutes left, and I'm to the end of the chat. So we're going to finish this out by popping over to Facebook. And we're going to look at Facebook together, guys. This should be entertaining. So let me get this set up. And we're going to go, I'm on my Facebook home. All right, here we go. Let me pop. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. That was my intermission one. We are on Facebook now, and let me blow this up a little bit so you all can see this. I think you should be able to see this now. What we're going to do, guys, is we're going to scroll through Facebook for a few minutes, and we're just going to see if there's anything interesting here. There might be some questions I can help answer, too. All right, these are the sorts of things I skip over because I'm not interested in that sort of stuff. Here's an advertisement. That's not interesting. For you DMs that don't play at home, what is the best way you have found to transport your books from place to place? All right, here we go. Here's an answer to that question. See this right here? This is an iPad. An iPad can hold lots of PDFs. That is the single best way to transport my books from game session to game session. However, I usually take the core books with me, Dungeon Master Guide, Player's Handbook, and the DMG. I already said that. Monster Manual is the other one. Plus maybe something like, if I know I'm using monsters out of Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes, I will take Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes. But the other way that I transport my books, let me show you this. Uh-oh, one of my cats came out making a bunch of noise. So, you guys can see this. This is basically luggage, and it has this like little luggage thing here. So I load this guy up right here with like all of my books and my miniature stuff. I have this like grid stuff that I use, and so I load that thing up. It's got wheels on it, and it helps me carry all my books. And so that's how I do it. So there we go. That was a fun little answer. Oh, Fierce Mushroom says, behold the evil that is Facebook. I like Facebook. I think it's cool. It's interesting. Before I started running a YouTube channel, I never was on Facebook. And then I started putting all my videos on Facebook and stuff. And now I'm starting to like it. But there's definitely some questionable stuff. I don't care about questions like that. What is this? Oh, wow. Okay. Let's skip through some of that stuff. You know what we should do? Okay. What is the best counter against Wizard with active mirror image and lucky trait against tons of AoE? I don't know, just attack them. Let's see, anything interesting here? I've been playing a sorceress from 1st to 7th level. I was pretty excited at first. I hadn't played D&D for almost 20 years, so I figured it would be fun to explore a new class. But now I find it limited. For a being of raw magic, you certainly don't have very many spells. That's exactly how the sorcerer is. You don't have many spells. It's how the class is set up. And even bards end up with more. I think bards, they might, yeah, because of they do end up with a few more, and from different classes. That's true. I thought maybe, so they're basically, she's thinking that sorcerer is the worst class. What do you guys think? Wizard versus sorcerer. My personal opinion, wizard, every day of the week. I think wizard, because of the variety of different spells and being able to memorize different spells, and being able to cast ritual spells, I think hands down wizard, yes, absolutely. There you go. Why am I getting all these weird posts on here? Oh, to all the homebrewers and world builders, how do you develop culture? What do you focus on to make your cultures feel unique? I use Forgotten Realms. I don't worry about culture in my games. My games are all really adventure based. It's mostly just action and adventure. You know. Oh, that's interesting. Why am I getting this weird stuff on here? You know what I should do? I should go over to like an actual D&D group, because this is my homepage feed. Stand by. Where'd that go? All right, sorry. Trying to. Here's a good one. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Let's go over to this one. Let's check this out. I don't know if this is fun for you guys. I thought this might be interesting since I didn't have any other questions. Just look at this kind of stuff. Oh, Wild Magic. You're right, Fierce Mushroom. Wild Magic is tons of fun. The Wild Magic table is fun. Totally. Here's something. So my DM has brought up an issue with certain AoE spells that I had also had when I was a DM. The situation is this. We are in combat. My compatriots and I were fighting Kobold. The barbarian ran ahead to see blah, blah, blah. Something about like... I don't know. We'll skip that one. That's too long. That's too complicated. That is the wall of text. When somebody has like a big, huge wall of text, I'm like, what? I'm pretty sure I know more than half of you are going to say, but I'm still curious what everyone thinks about low-level flying. For the love of Soon, keep it civil, you pack of animals. We already talked about flying a little bit. That's interesting. What type of creatures would you have kobolds ride into combat? Ooh, so there is a thing called a drake, I believe. A dragon drake or something like that. I believe it is in Volos. It might be in Mordenkainen's. No, I think it's in Volos. I would probably have kobolds ride that. Or maybe a big lizard. Some sort of like big, huge lizard would be really cool. Oh, Yoda says he was trying not to put his team to sleep with the sleep spell as a sorcerer. Yeah, I don't know why. What does it say? So let's look up the sleep spell. And where is that? Where does the sleep spell? Let me see. Let's find the player's handbook. Here we go. Let's go to spell casting, and let's find the sleep spell. We're gonna have to go through it. We'll have to do it a couple times because it's gonna keep finding. We have to actually go to sleep. This is probably gonna be faster if I do something like this. There we go. All right, I'm looking for the sleep spell. Is there a way to do it without targeting your players? Like if they're in the same area. Come on, baby. P. I'm at P. See, this is exactly why I use that app to find spells. Because it takes forever to find a spell. Okay, so it says, creatures within 20 feet of a point you choose within range are affected in ascending order of their current hit points. Starting with the creature that has the lowest hit points. Period, end of story. So, like, you would start at the very center of your 20 feet, and then you would just pick creatures radiating out there, and then, you know, if they have... You start with creature that has the lowest hit points. So, if that's an enemy, then it's an enemy. If it's a PC, it's a PC. I think that's the way it works. And so, there's nothing built into the spell that allows you to not target your friends. So this could totally be a friendly fire thing. So I think that's the answer to that question. Kobolds say, or Fierce Mushroom says kobolds should ride dire badgers. Absolutely. That would be really cool. That would be really cool. All right. Let's see if we got one more interesting thing here. And then we're going to call it a night, guys. Because it's 10 o'clock and I said I was going to stop at 10. So let's just see what we got here. See if we got one more interesting thing. And then we're going to stop. We already answered that. We already looked at that one. Those look cool. Those are cool minis. All right. Okay. I really need some ideas. I want miniatures for a dragon-heavy game, but don't want to pay $5 a piece for kobolds, which aren't dragons, which will play heavily. Any ideas? I've checked Amazon for cheap pieces, and none of the sets do it for me. Side note, good Dragonborn half-dragon pieces would be good too. Yeah, I mean, cheap miniatures, the best thing I can say for cheap miniatures, this isn't, if you're looking for specific miniatures, then you're pretty much going to have to go on to like, what do you want to call it? Reaper Minis and buy exactly what you want, right? If you just want general generic miniatures, then the best thing I got is there are these games, and here's one of them called Wrath of Ashardalon. And there's this game, there's one called Legend of Drizzt, which you can get as well. That's like in the background of all my videos. And there are, what do you want to call it? I think there are a couple more that they did. But those board games right there run $50 or less on Amazon. And you get about 40 miniatures with them. And some of them are big, like legitimately big miniatures, like super, super steel. And so if you're looking for cheap miniatures, that's the best way to go. I bought both of those games. I've never played the games at all. I have only ever used the miniatures, and I paint them and use them. And so that's what I do. From most of my miniatures come that way. And I also had a guy who had a bunch of Reaper Bones minis that he was selling, and I bought a lot of those for really, really cheap. But that's like a one-off. You can't rely on that sort of thing. So there we go. Yeah, there's like 10 of those games with minis. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of... The best way to get cheap minis, guys, is to find board games that come with miniatures and then buy those board games. In my experience, that's the best way to do it. You could also go on eBay and find lots of minis. They're like lots, L-O-T... Yeah, okay, whatever. Lots of minis you can find that are being sold, and you can usually get them for about a little over $1 each. And that's another good way to get cheap minis. So that's that. Let's go pop over to here. All right, guys, so it's after 10. We're going to end this bad boy here, and we're going to call it a day. So I want to just thank you guys for joining me. It was lots of fun. I'm glad I got to answer some questions and hang out with you all. We're going to do the next live stream in like 2 weeks. I believe that is December 7th. And it'll be, I think that's a Friday. It'll be at 8 o'clock Eastern time, just like it was this time. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the adventure that we began creating together. I think it was called Trouble in Round Hill. It was about gnomes and throwing potions and stuff like that. So we had 2 live streams where we worked on that, and we got very, very close to finishing it. And so we're going to finish it off on the next live stream and call that a day. And that's that. So again, thanks guys for joining me and hanging out. I hope this was entertaining and fun and something cool to do on your Friday night. So we'll see you guys all next time. And then I'll do my standard exit thing that I do. Until next time, let's play D&D. Oh, sweet, Josh. I'll see you later, man. Another great stream. Had you on speakers. That's awesome, Josh. I'm glad you could join us, man. I hope things are going well for you, buddy. I'll catch you over on Discord. Yeah, Jennifer the Healer. I thought I was ending the live stream, and now I'm reading chat, and we're just keeping going. So that's now we're supposed, because I can't find the button. The button to stop streaming. I have to find it. I have to find the button before I can actually stop streaming, which is the problem. I think I have found the button to stop streaming. It's right there. It's staring at me. So, all right, guys. See you guys later. Hang out last time. Check me out on the Discord as well. There's a link below to my Discord server. It's a way that we can hang out and answer questions and stuff like that. So there you go. All right, guys. See you later. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Till next time.